Okay, good morning, everybody. We've started the broadcast and I've started the recording. So we will be recording this webinar and we will be sharing out the slides and the recording afterwards. So thank you, everybody, for attending today. We're doing a special weather briefing for our heat wave coming up this weekend that's going to last into next week. Everybody, just some logistics. Everybody should be muted right now. But if you do have questions, I have Robin helping me out with some questions. So you can enter those into the question box. We'll try and address that as we go through. But then at the end, we'll be able to take a closer look at the questions and we can unmute everybody so you can raise your hand and chime in and ask your question. So with that, I will go ahead and begin. Make sure my screens are advancing. Okay, so starting off with just some key points, some overview of what we're expecting. We're looking for a significant warming trend that's going to begin to take place later today, but more pronounced Thursday, July 4th, and lasting through the weekend and into early next week. When we start to see high pressure ridging of this magnitude, we have higher confidence that this will take place and it will be a longer duration event. And so that's why our heat risk and weather risk, as I'll mention in a minute, has climbed. We are looking for temperatures to be climbing above normal and remaining at that above normal threshold for several days. And along with our hot daytime temperatures, we will have the warm overnight temperatures that's going to give us little to no overnight relief. And so that's another factor that's working into our higher heat risk and the confidence with this event. As far as heat risk goes, I do have some graphics to show you in just a minute, but we will see widespread moderate heat risk levels across our region, the Pacific Northwest and Inland Northwest. And then we do start to see that major heat risk trickle in Sunday through at least Monday, and it may move into Tuesday. During this period and after this period, we will start to see some elevated fire weather concerns into next week, just with many days of hot and dry conditions and unstable. It's kind of a given. We will start to see those elevated fire weather concerns trickle in. Our fuels this time of year are seeing increased drying trends, and so more of our fuels are becoming cured and ready to go. But the one benefit to this is we will not see a lot of wind as a threat at this time, but when we start to look at the ridge breaking down late next week, we will start to be paying very close attention to how that plays out and how the wind plays into the ridge breaking down. So starting off with our forecast high temperatures, there we go. On the left, we have I know it doesn't cover every city, a select set of cities that have the forecast high temperatures, and then the smaller number in the box, it's a little tough to see. That is the record temperature for that date, along with the year that that record was set. And so the left-hand side is the high temperatures, and the right-hand side is our overnight low temperatures. And so you will start to see our overnight low temperatures creep into the 50s and 60s, some places upper 60s. Just reiterating the fact that we will see very little overnight relief for many locations that hang on to that daytime heat. And on the left side, you see most of the region for all these cities shown, temperatures in the upper 80s to upper 90s and even surpassing that triple digit mark for several days. If you take a look at when the heat really starts to set in and we start to see our warmest days, Fridays when we start to see the bigger jump for the heat, and then Saturdays when we really start to see a lot of those places see the warmest temperatures continuing through early next week. So when we look and consider what our weather risk outlook is, we're taking into consideration a lot of different things: our confidence, the certainty, and the risk. And so for our region, if you get our daily updated and weekly one-pager updates, this will look very familiar to you. We're highlighting the weather risk threat and outlook for many different places. And we just have the temperatures highlighted right now because that's our main concern. But you can start to see Thursday, tomorrow, we start to see a lot of the minor risk and then some of the moderate risk. But then really Friday, Saturday into early next week is when we really begin to get that heat settling in and our risk really climbs up from the moderate to even the major threshold for most of our areas. Now in the Northwest, we've begun working on putting out some heat headlines between the Spokane office, Pendleton, Portland, Seattle, and Missoula. We have a wide variety of heat headlines going on, but the bottom message is that it's going to be a prolonged, long duration heat event. This is probably our biggest heat wave of the summer this far. So that's why we have all these heat products going out. And so rather than focusing on if it's a heat warning or a heat advisory, just know that the impacts are going to affect people very differently. And so across the region, we have the messaging beginning to go out. Now, when we start to look at probabilities of reaching specific temperature thresholds, I split the cities into Washington and Idaho. So first looking at many of the Washington cities here, the chance of reaching the high temperature of 95 degrees or higher, this is the percent chance. So if you look at OMAC, for example, you start to see Friday, there's a 75% chance of seeing that daytime temperature of 95 degrees or higher. And then by Saturday, Sunday, Monday, it's almost a given that we will see daytime temperatures of that specific threshold. If you have a decision point of 95 degrees or higher or various temperature thresholds that we can answer a question to, just let us know. We picked 95 as just kind of the threshold here. And then looking into the next slide, we have Idaho cities. So same type of scenario. We have the chance of max temperatures of 95 degrees or higher. You can see Lewiston's our hot spot, so they're pretty guaranteed to see 95 or higher almost every day through the coming week. And another thing, we picked Thursday through next Thursday just to show the duration of this heat. So we have many days of these very high temperatures that we're expecting forecast. And then the next two slides, as I mentioned, the daytime temperatures are going to be very hot. We will have the overnight temperatures be very warm as well. So starting out with the Washington cities, the chance of the overnight temperatures being 60 degrees or higher. Many locations that are in the lower elevations are seeing these very high temperatures overnight. So for people that don't have adequate cooling opportunities, cooling conditions in their homes or wherever they live or work, this is where they're going to be more affected. If you can hydrate frequently, check on pets, children, people without that cooling capabilities, that's what we are advising and suggesting for the safety precautions. And then now we have the Idaho chance of temperatures of 60 degrees or higher at night. You can start to see the population areas like Bonners Ferry, Coeur d'Alene, St. Mary's have 50 to 80% chance of those overnight temperatures not getting below 60 degrees. So it's quite warm for those overnight temperatures. Okay, so next I'm going to touch on the heat risk. And so we started with Thursday and we're going to go into next week, but here's a graphic just highlighting the heat risk. And so you can see on the left, we have a lot of the yellow. The green is kind of hard to see, but a lot of the yellow from Winthrop to Bonners Ferry down to Pullman. And then we have some trickling in of that orange, that moderate risk that affects most people, especially people without that effective cooling. And then Friday, we have that bigger ramp up of the temperatures warming. We start to see a more widespread painting of the moderate heat risk. And now we're starting to see the areas in the Cascade Valleys and the Yakima Valley start to get to that major heat risk threshold. And that's where it's going to affect just about everybody without effective cooling and hydration systems. And then moving into the weekend, we really just are continuing to see the heat risk expand and continue through the weekend. Saturday, Sunday looks like we're expanding more of that major heat risk areas, and now we're starting to see some areas of that magenta. This is the extreme heat risk. And what the heat risk is taking into account, it takes into account how significantly above normal the high and low temperatures are. It takes into account the time of the year, the duration of the unusual heat, and then it's also looking at that difference between the low and high temperature. So a lot of things are going into the calculations with the heat risk, but it's a very useful and a pretty accurate, it's been a pretty accurate tool for us to use for the Weather Service. And then the last heat risk here is on Monday. Again, there's not a lot of change from Saturday, Sunday to Monday. We still have that widespread, moderate, and major heat risk, and then you can start to see that major heat risk across the Cascade Valleys there. And like I said, we will share the slides, so the links on the pages that we share you can access, but the heat risk viewer online is it's dynamic, so you can zoom in and see the page, and you can click on the map there and pull up the forecast for the location, and we have versions in Spanish as well. So beyond Monday, what are we looking for a forecast outlook? Well, it looks a lot the same of what we're looking at in the next couple days. Unfortunately, the outlook continues to favor above normal temperatures. We're pretty solid in the high probabilities there. And then below normal for precipitation, about 50 to 60% chance for that below normal precipitation across the inland Northwest. This is our warm and dry time of the year. And then similarly, the Climate Prediction Center has this experimental risk that they put out, and for temperatures, it's just again highlighting the moderate excessive heat probabilities going through late next week. So it's just a longer term outlook and probabilistic outlook of what we're expecting. Okay, so when will the pattern change? When will we start to see relief? There's a couple slides here. I'm going to go slow, but this is Tuesday of next week. We still have the ridge of high pressure. That's the red areas. It shows what cities showed up. So you can see Moses Lake and Washington there for point of reference. But we move through now. It's Wednesday. I'm going to go slow because the animation was not going to work. So Wednesday, you can still see that ridge of high pressure centered over across the desert Southwest, and we're still being influenced by the very warm temperatures across the inland Northwest. Let's see. Okay, Thursday, still, again, the same type of situation. That ridge is not really moving a whole lot through late next week. And then as far out as our models are going right now, this is Friday of next week, we start to see that ridge shifting a little bit towards the east, and we're starting to see some relief in the ridge of high pressure, and the temperatures may start to see a relative, quote unquote, cooling as we get some southwest flow coming off the coast late next week. So for heat safety, we want to remind people to never leave kids or pets in unattended vehicles. Stay hydrated, take breaks. If you do have to be outdoors for work or recreation, please find shade, take breaks. If you can avoid being outdoors during the hottest part of the day, please do so. Just many different ways to try and encourage people to beat the heat, to try and be safe from the heat. A couple other graphics we have, this one's in English and Spanish, just talking about the differences of heat exhaustion and heat stroke and recognizing those signs and symptoms, just to kind of share out, and we can share these on our social media or share with any of you if you want to share these graphics with your communities. And to come to a summary, we do, like I said, we do have high confidence of this long duration heat wave. Once we start to see these weather patterns of this magnitude, we tend to have high confidence of this high impact event, and we will see that moderate to major risk for heat risk for this heat wave will be a prolonged, a longer duration. It's probably our biggest heat wave of this year so far. We will see numerous days of above normal temperatures, and those temperatures will remain above normal for many days. And then we're not real confident, but that's what we're looking at right now for the breakdown of the ridge late next week. Could start to see some relatively cooler air come into the region. But we will be taking a closer look at the fire weather concerns as that ridge breaks down, because we will be introducing some wind, and after many days of hot and dry conditions, That's where we tend to perks our ears up when we start to see the concerns for fire weather. So we will be keeping a close eye on that. And that's the last slide I have. So I will stop the recording and then open it up for questions if we have. I will mention that we don't have any additional briefings scheduled right now, but we are open to that. So I'll poll the audience and see if it would be helpful if we want to do another briefing in the coming days. As always, if you have questions or impacts to share from the heat, if you have decisions you're making at specific thresholds or you have impacts from the heat, we always want to hear that feedback and hear that. And then if you ever need to access our briefing page that has our latest partner email, one-page briefing, the link here at the bottom, that's where you would go to find that.